Welcome to the Founder Podcast. I'm Magnus and I'm joined today by my co-host, rugby league legend Justin Hodges and Big Benny Marr. Welcome, boys.
Thank you. How are you, mate?
I'm fantastic, and we got an awesome guest today. We have Ace Shuster, who's a finance broker, and I believe you've only just founded a company a few months ago. Is that right, mate? Tell us about that.
That's right. So second founded company. We are 3 months in as of October 1.
Mate, and what drew you into the finance industry, and why are you passionate about it?
I absolutely love it. So I was poached to get into the finance industry out of a mobile phone shop. So I did about I think it was 6 or 7 years in mobile phones, and did a bit of corporate mobile phone account management and things like that. And had a finance broker walk into the office and try and buy some mobile phones, and I think the rest is history. I always had a passion for banking and finance, and he offered me an opportunity, and there was no chance I was going to let it up. And what is that? I think that was about 17 years ago now.
Wow. So did you have anything, what about when you were at school? Did you study finance or?
Failed year 10 accounting, failed year 11 maths, but always had a passion for learning about business. We had a subject, it was small, medium enterprise, and then we had accounting and finance. I absolutely nailed small business and small, medium enterprises and failed the other two. So I think I should probably learn how to do the other two and through the career.
All right. You mentioned obviously grade 10. Well, tell us about your childhood.
Yeah, so I grew up in hospitality. So as a very young kid, we owned a pub in very, very rural New South Wales. There was no McDonald's, no KFC, none of that. And we lived above the pub. So I remember as a young bloke in the dressing gown, every Saturday night, if there was a fight or a fire or something, we'd have to run across the road under the bus stop and things like that. And then after that, we moved to Victoria, and the parents bought a motel. And it was the stereotypical family business motel. Had a couple of staff and things like that, but really didn't think it at the time. But geez, I learned a lot of principles about business by living in a motel that the family run and own. And
so you had to jump in hands in, you're changing beds, and
I reckon I folded more sheets in a year than someone does in a lifetime, and folded the towels. And Christmas Day didn't start for us because it's a very family affair. Christmas Day didn't start until everyone that was leaving for the day, their rooms were made, beds were washed, and everything folded and ironed. And then sort of Christmas Day used to start about midday.
Some of the fundamentals with running a business, though, isn't it? It's all about customer service.
Customer service, but just being tenacious. You know, just because an idea didn't work the first time doesn't mean it won't work the second with some tweaks. But the key thing I learned, again, probably didn't feel it at the time, was just if you see $1 on the road, pick it up. You know, if someone knocks on we used to have a night bell. So, of course, people would ring it at 3 o'clock in the morning for a room for the night. And you know what? If you have to let a room for 60% of the full overnight rate and they're there for 4 hours, if you say no, it's $60 you didn't have in the bank. And when you're the ones that are sort of cleaning the room and doing all the washing, everything afterwards, then it's just straight money in the bank.
Yeah. Mate, talk to me about your first, obviously we all have setbacks. Talk to me about your first massive setback and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, so it was quite an interesting one. So in finance and what we do, 99% of the time, we don't get paid until we've settled a transaction or until someone's drawn down on money. So we can put all this work into a transaction, it not turn into a settled transaction, and we make a donut. Yeah, wow. And I worked on a deal for, I think it was about 3 weeks in total. I put all my time and effort into this one deal, and it didn't happen. Just couldn't convince the bank that it was something that should happen. And geez, I was a bit busted after, I tell you. I feel like I've been beaten up by a couple of people, but a few takeaways from it, really more than anything. I learned sometimes a quick no is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, if something might take you 3 weeks for a maybe, or 1 day for a no, sometimes the no's, you know, the right answer to give someone. As much as it, you know, you see $1, you pick it up. Sometimes that $1's worth 5 cents, and there's a step down the road to $1 that you can pick up on it.
Well said. I got a mate of mine who's in real estate, and he says the same thing, and his boss tells him you don't get paid for nearly selling a house.
Correct.
You get paid for selling the house. And I get a background in construction, and I was always paid for a result. So we built something and then we got paid. And if you didn't build anything, then you didn't get paid. So when it was raining, you worked, because if you went home, you didn't get paid. And I think that's a really good fundamental business lesson. So thanks.
And if you could go back in time, and what would be some of the, I suppose, the things you'd talk to yourself about running a business? What would be some of the things you'd, do differently, or what would be some of the, even like if any of our listeners today, what would be some of the advice you might hand out about leading a business?
Yeah, so there's a very common one that I think everyone self-employed hears probably once a week for the first year. When you go from working on wages to starting a business, you leave your 9 to 5 to work 24/7. And I don't think anyone can disagree that you have these hopes and dreams of sleep in on Monday or finish early on a Friday. And if you're not working, you're not generating money. Yep. And usually if you're not working or generating money, you're spending it. So the one thing that I really learned is the phone rings, you answer it. With that though, there does come the flexibility, right? So I've got 3 very, very young kids, and love spending time with my kids. And there's nothing better than on that odd Friday finishing at 3:00, and when they walk in the door from school, geez, I've never seen 3 kids so excited that dad's home on Friday after school, and not so much just fighting over dinner, bath, and bedtime.
So what you're saying is that when you do have just a straight 9 to 5, then it's simple, because you start at 9 and you finish at 5, you go home, you forget. But when you're running your own business, it's 24/7. So that whole work-life balance does become an issue. But how do you handle that now?
I've gone through very, very different thoughts and theories on work-life balance. I don't think it's a thing. I think when it's your own business, your work is your life and your life is your work.
Yep.
And it took me a long time in the first business I had to understand that you can do both. You can do both. It's when when the kids are in the pool swimming at swimming lessons or something like that, nothing stops you picking up the phone and making a quick phone call. Yep. I think since COVID and the work from home environment, people are okay for background noise. Yep. There's a very much an icebreaker and a good rapport building exercise to say, my kids are in the pool, I had a quick minute, I thought I'd jump on the phone. I think people appreciate it. Because, most of our clients are in a situation where they've got a family, or the family's all grown up, or they're looking at a family. I think it's very, 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 very more respectable and accepted to not be sitting in a cubicle with a headset on just working those set hours.
Yep. That's interesting, because I've got a saying around that. It's not like you said work-life balance, it's work-life fusion, where you're just marrying the two together. And like you said, you can go and drop the kids at school, and then when you're on the way to the office, you can make some calls and get the job done.
I think with it is as well, the difference, what I noticed in an office environment between 9 to 5 and I call it the 24/7, is you don't hang around a coffee machine. I can't remember the last time I worked in an office where people smoked. Because it's contact hours. Although you're 9 to 5, if you have a lunch, have a tea break, have a coffee, have a chat, you potentially lose 2 or 3 hours. Yes. So having those really strong contact hours is a massive difference, I find, as well.
I think for me, obviously, I'm not big on the finance type of stuff, but what are some, obviously, everyone's going through a tough time at the moment, but what are some trends that we all should be looking out for?
Trends are an interesting one. I think, especially now, we've got a quite diverse business. So we do asset finance for everyday items, cars, boats, bikes, caravans. But we also do a lot of work in the commercial space. So we do a lot of unsecured business loans. We do a lot of overdrafts. We do a lot of heavy yellow goods, bulldozers, excavators, and mining equipment. So when times are tough at home and spending's tightening up there, the businesses are spending money. So we're lucky enough to be diversified to kind of fill both avenues, but trying to predict what's going to happen when, and especially trying to staff up for which seasons are busy, I think trends and traditions are gone. Now, I'll use the COVID word again, but since COVID, I just don't think trends are around anymore and predictions are around anymore.
And so what advice would you have for any entrepreneurs, and we'll use the C word again, post-COVID? What would you have for anyone who's out there who's maybe looking to raise capital or looking to build, funding for their projects, or whatever the case may be, anything finance related, what would be some advice you'd give to a young or even an old entrepreneur who's looking to do a new thing?
There's probably three core things. I think you've got to have a strong business plan. And, you know, if we look at something relative to a construction, a strong business plan isn't build buildings, sell them, make profit. It's you know, it's the old marketing thing of like having a SWOT analysis. Who are your competitors? What's going to happen with it? But I think a lot of the world now, and especially what we do, is about building networks. You've got to network with the right people. And the right people aren't necessarily someone that will buy from you or use your services, but potentially someone that can mentor you through business, or that can say, hey, you're stepping outside the business plan there. A lot of people rely on their accountant, a lot on their husband or their wife. I just think having that community around you of the right networking people is just, it's a massive fundamental in what you do there. But it's all about being transparent. You can't have a really awful week and then go home and try and act like things are hunky dory and all happy and sad and happy. You've got to externalize. I think if you're trying to get some funding for something, and all you're selling is roses, people aren't going to believe you. You've got to be transparent in what you're selling. You know, if you've got a fantastic product, geez, you've had about 6 court cases going for the product that no one knows about, it's all going to come out. People are going to find out. You've got to be transparent in what you're doing as well.
Yeah.
So,
what about some key financial principles that people should stick to?
Know your numbers. It blows my mind how, I won't say startups, but when you're sort of a year or two into business, you've got a profit and loss statement that shows I made $100,000. You've got a bank account that shows $10,000. Some people can't marry up the fact that their profit loss is not the same as their cash flow. And I would say every single day I'm talking to somebody about something similar to that. And again, it's about networking with the right people there. If you're networking with the right people that know the differences, I'm not just necessarily saying pester your accountant about it, but if you're in a networking business forum and you're hearing someone talk about profit and loss but geez, the bank account's low, hey, I'm in a similar situation. How have you found it or what's happened there? But knowing your numbers is it's a phenomenally powerful tool, but it can also destroy you. Yep. If you don't know your numbers, it can sink you. Yep. Mm-hmm. And before it sinks your business, it'll probably sink your mind.
Great advice.
Yeah. I think I was just leading on from that question there is, can you explain to the listeners in terms of a good debit and also the bad debit, just going on from what you just sort of said?
Like in a credit style scenario. Yeah. So there's it's an interesting one. So bad debt is what, you know, everyone tells you to stick away from, but I hate saying it, our business is kind of built on bad debt, right? So in my opinion, a bad debt is something that does not make you money. Yep. So boats are a fantastic idea and everyone should own a boat, but financing a boat, it's not going to make you money. It's just going to cost you money. Yep. So if you go ahead and, you know, finance a caravan, finance a boat, finance a couple of cars, rack up a credit card debt, that can put a lot of financial strain at some point on a business or a family. Yep. So really, in contrast to a good debt, something like a mortgage, it's going to increase your net worth. It's going to increase your portfolio. And probably somewhere in the middle there is business funding. So when I say getting a car loan, a caravan loan, or a boat loan is bad debt, in a business environment, it can be very, very good debt. Because if you're financing a truck to win a contract and that contract's worth a lot of money to you, your net benefit is increasing your net worth or increasing your business profits there. So I suppose bad debt's something that doesn't make you money.
Yep.
Good debt's something that does make you money. Yeah. But somewhere in the middle there, you've got to live. Yeah. You know, you can't spend your whole life never having any form of bad debt and only ever having good debt and then sort of hit 70 or 80 and wish, geez, I wish when I was 40 I bought that boat and gone fishing.
Yeah. I've heard it as it's an appreciating asset or a depreciating asset. So like you said, a vehicle's a depreciating asset and a house mortgage, like you said, but then that balancing point I'm glad you brought up in the business sense, because obviously that business could be an asset generator. And so you're quite often needing to borrow money to be able to get that business to grow and to get to the next step, which I know Benny understands.
Absolutely. Look, in terms of the market and everything that's going on at the moment, like, what are your views on cryptocurrency and, it versus traditional banking methods? So in terms of like, if you're out there and you're trying to analyze whether you should invest in something or borrow money or just your next move, what would be some advice around whether it's crypto, traditional banking, or like, what are your thoughts around that?
Definitely, I'm absolutely no expert in the area of investment in crypto, but I'm a tangible guy. I want to invest in something I can touch.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in property.
Yep.
I think property it's a brick, it's a mortar. If it all turns bad, you've got a roof over your head. The volatility of crypto and I think NFTs have just hit an all-time low as well. I think it might have even been Justin Bieber that bought that monkey NFT. I think he paid $21 million for it. It's worth about $400 now. So
Oops.
But then again, NFTs were meant to be the next big thing. But look, I've dabbled in crypto a bit. I just don't understand it. I think with cash, it's in my pocket. With property, it bricks and mortar. With a car or a truck, you can get in it, you can fix it. It's on you if something goes wrong. With crypto just being so non-centralized, and I still don't think it's even governed. I haven't checked in it for a while, but it's a level of risk for me.
Just to follow up on that, so do you think that maybe diversification of funds isn't always a good thing, and maybe it's wiser to stay in your lane if you're out there listening to this podcast?
I think you've got to know your risk profile. Okay. I think you've got to know what levels of risk you're willing to tolerate in your guts.
Yeah.
Do you want to be kept up at 1 o'clock in the morning because you bought 10 grand in crypto versus putting 10 grand into BHP or something like that may have a bit of volatility? And a great example is my wife and I. So when you look at our superannuation profiles, my superannuation profile is high risk. Get it pumping. Hers is minimal risk because she's very, very conservative, and she knows that come retirement, her money's safe and steady. Whereas
Who's doing better? Whose fund is doing well?
Good question. I was about to jump in on that one.
She's sleeping easier at night. But I think, especially in the last couple of years, I think mine might be up 1 or 2% more. But then again, the high risk, it could be up 20% more.
Yeah. What about mistakes? Are there any common mistakes that you come across amongst your clients that could be avoided?
I'll revert back to what I said before, knowing your numbers. Yeah. There's so many people that I see that have been in business, usually 2 to 3 years is that happy mark. They got cash. They got money in the bank. They go, you know what? It's time to buy that Ram, or it's time to buy that Porsche. The balance sheet's horrible.
Yep.
The business makes a loss, but they got cash flow. And then all of a sudden the accountant goes, well, hang on a minute. One, there's fringe benefits tax implications to everything you're buying and having fun with. But two, mate, your business isn't making money. You shouldn't be doing this. But I've got cash in the bank, which reverts me back to the cash flow versus profit and loss. But the other one is surrounding a lot of influential people in your business and business partners and things like that too. I think it's the responsibility of every single person that owns a business to know their business. You can trust in a lot of people. You can take advice from your accountant. If your business goes bust, your accountant's not going to lose sleep. Might be a bit disappointed.
So you're
He's not going to lose
responsible.
sleep. You're responsible. If you're adult enough to sign a directorship or invest money into a business, you got to know what's going on in the business. And I think as business grows, it becomes easier and easier not to, because if you have an accountant on the books as an example, I think you've still got to know what they're doing. There's one thing that, in this new business, we've only lodged one BAS. I went through the best line by line. And there are a couple of things there that our accountant missed out on. It was just dollars and cents. But if dollars and cents over 4 quarters a year, over 10 years,
Adds up.
and I'd prefer the money in my pocket than somebody else's.
Yep. What's your stance on the saying, you got to have money to make money?
I'm a realist. I think you can be as creative as you want, and you can be as resilient as you want. I think you need some form of a buffer to be able to stop that little person in the back of your head going, you better not take this risk because this could be the last bit of money. Whereas I think if you've got a buffer there, you might take that positive forming risk that really could show up as a big benefit for you. I don't think you need a lot of money to make money. It depends on what you're doing, of course, but I think you need a buffer, just a comfortability buffer. If you're in a high-risk work or high-risk business, I should say, will depend on how much of a buffer you need. Yep. In something like we do in asset finance, so our remuneration is normally on a monthly basis. So if you've got a 3-month buffer, you can have a bad month, you can have a good month, you can have a medium month. If you're a builder or a building developer where you might not get paid for 6 or 12 months, you'd probably want to cover yourself for probably two invoice periods, call it.
I just got a question. I think when I think about rugby league, obviously when you get injured, right, that's probably the worst time of your life. What sort of, like, for yourself for 1 year, when you look back on what you've done so far, is there like a time where you had like a really, really bad year and you know why you made those mistakes, and then how did you fix those mistakes?
So more so a bad quarter.
Yep.
And the bad quarter was, it involved me having to let go of certain things. Every single aspect of our business, I can do. I can reconcile a bank statement in an accounting system. It's not overly difficult. It's tick and match and drag and drop. I can do social media posts. Drop into Canva, put my logo, put a cool car, post it. But there was a time there where that was taking about 8 hours a week. And then 8 hours a week compounding over 4.3 weeks in a month, over 3 months. All up, it ran at about 32 hours that I was non-productive in the business.
Per month.
Per month. So by me being non-productive, the business is not generating money. Now, it took a lot for me to let go of things that I know how to do, but I've got a fantastic digital team, and my digital team are based in India, and they can knock up 30 Facebook posts for me in the time it takes me to do one, and economies of scale, it's substantially cheaper for me to get them to do it than for me to be not doing it myself. Same as my bookkeeper, I've got a very tenacious bookkeeper that I almost dare myself not to have a receipt for her. But she reconciles bank statements 1,000 times quicker than I do, which frees me up to generate business. And so non-productive time for me was probably a real thing that I had to work through. And it was very, very hard to let go because I can do the tasks.
You mentioned marketing, you mentioned social media. How important is that for small business today?
Phenomenal. I think social media now is what the yellow pages were in the 90s. I think if you're not on social media in some way, you almost don't have a business. Now, it doesn't mean you need to be generating leads off of social media, but it's kind of the point now, if someone Googles your business, what comes up? You Google my business profile, usually number 2 or 3 is either your website or your social profiles. Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't have social profiles, something else is stepping up into that. Yep. And it could be a third-party lead gen company, or it could be a competitor. I don't think you need to be very active on socials, but I think you need to have socials. Yep.
What about LinkedIn? So your particular profession, finance industry, is obviously a little bit different from a hairdresser, for example. Do you find much activity through your LinkedIn?
LinkedIn's fantastic for us, not so much for generating leads or generating inquiry, but it's a very, very open forum. And a lot of times on LinkedIn, I'll share hey guys, I'm having trouble finding a lender for this deal. If you're a lender, if you know of a lender that can help, please reach out. And I get a lot of people I know say, hey mate, have you tried this lender? But I also get lenders I've never even heard of before saying, hey, we're connected through people. Let's take this offline and let's workshop the deal. Yep. I find that more so LinkedIn for me than actually generating business.
Yep. And over the last 12 months or 2 years, have you found a particular industry, like are people buying excavators, which industries do you think are doing really well at the moment that are borrowing money, particularly for toys?
Yeah, for toys, definitely construction.
Yep.
Construction, demolition as well, with a lot of new construction going up, which Magnus, probably better than all of us. Demolition is its own industry now. It's not a case of you're a landscaper that owns demolition equipment. And I'll tell you, most builders are almost 6 to 12 months out at the moment. I mean, if you want a tiler, you're almost waiting 9 months to get a tiler into your house. So all these properties that are being knocked down and rebuilt, these demolition businesses are going gangbuster, and they all need the big American utes. They all need a boat for the weekend. They all need a 10-year-old excavator won't do it anymore. They need a brand new excavator, and great for our business. But
Oh, it's interesting because I think you'd be at the forefront being able to see which of those industries and that are doing really well at the moment. Any final questions, boys, before we hit the quick fires?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I guess, what would you say to anyone who's heard this podcast and think, this is all good for the wealthy, but I'm just starting out, and how can this podcast help me? How can this help me diversify what I'm trying to do? How can I get benefit from what Ace is here talking to us about today? What would your advice be to them?
Well, I think we were all new business founders at one point, right? I know when you founded Full Spectrum, you came from a similar industry, but you hadn't run a business before.
Good.
Magnus, I know you've run a couple of businesses throughout the years, and Hodges, I know you're getting some things off the ground as well. It's networking. Network with people. There's I'm not just saying networking groups and going to breakfasts and dinners and lunches. It's community groups too. There's Chamber of Commerce that, I mean, I'll say they're inexpensive because cost comes into a lot of these things as well.
Yep.
Go and meet people.
Yep.
I network with other finance brokers. Yep. These people are my competitors. But there's nothing wrong. The world's big enough to have a lot of finance brokers or a lot of education businesses, a lot of builders, a lot of superstar NRL players. The world's big enough for all of us. Let's work together.
Yep. I could not agree more. I think that whole networking is supremely important, and just having that inner circle of support around you when you want to try and get something off the ground.
Absolutely.
Righto, mate. Quick fire
All
questions.
right,
You ready,
Careful.
Ace?
Here he goes.
Righto. Stocks or real estate?
Real estate.
Worst vice?
Procrastination.
Your success habits?
Kiss the toad.
What's your biggest financial myth?
You need money to make money.
Your favourite movie actor?
Ferrell.
What's your go-to financial news source?
I hate saying it. It's still news.com.au.
Best business book that you've read?
Atomic Habits.
What's your top tip for budgeting?
Be realistic about your budget. If you spend $600 a month on fuel, don't put $400 in your budget.
Well said. The most common financial services mistake people make?
Jumping in without budgeting.
What's one thing everyone should invest in?
Themselves.
Agreed. Will interest rates rise or fall this year?
This year, I think they'll stay stagnant. I think towards the end of 2025, we might get some relief.
All right, you heard it here. Best concert you've ever been to?
Warped Tour.
What financial skill should everybody learn?
I'm gonna change it. Not a financial skill, but a skill. Everyone should learn how to sell. Everyone should learn some form of sales.
Your biggest financial pet peeve?
People that don't know their numbers in business.
What do you believe is the most underrated skill needed to succeed as an entrepreneur?
Negotiation.
Last question, mate. Give us a tip that's so valuable we'd normally have to pay you for it.
Jeez, I was trying to think of something here, and the biggest tip I've got is have a go. If you think you've got a business and you can even do it as a side hustle, what do you got to lose? Especially if it's a side hustle. Have a go. We've very much got an Australian attitude of she'll be right. And if you believe in yourself and you believe in your concept, just do it. Launch it. Speak to people, speak to your friends, speak to your family. If enough people, I won't say everyone will say yes and support you through it, but if enough people think that you've got something good there, have a go.
Take a swing, have a crack.
That's it. Spot
well
on.
said, mate. Thank you very much, Ace.
Thank you, boys.
Loved all your advice.
fun.
And Benny, Hodges, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.